Literature, Jenny, has this fascinating way of exposing human nature, and there's no better example than Dmitri Karamazov's examination, a scene where a man's entire life gets dissected in the name of justice. But what if the very system designed to find truth is fundamentally flawed?
JW, what strikes me most about this scene in The Brothers Karamazov, it's like watching a psychological thriller unfold in real time, where every piece of evidence seems to point in opposite directions.
That's exactly right, Jenny. And what makes it so compelling is how Dmitri handles himself during this intense questioning. He's not trying to hide his flaws, he's practically shouting them from the rooftops. Yet there's this one line he won't cross: the murder of his father.
The psychological complexity is fascinating. Here's a man who openly admits to planning robbery but draws a moral line at murder. What does that tell us about human nature?
Well, it tells us something profound about how we compartmentalize morality. Studies have shown that even hardened criminals often have their own moral codes. Dmitri's case is like a 19th century case study in moral psychology.
Hmm. And don't you find it interesting how his emotional outbursts during the examination actually make him appear more guilty to the authorities?
Exactly. It's this terrible irony that speaks to something much deeper about justice systems. Even today, studies show that a defendant's emotional display influences jury decisions. Too much emotion seems suspicious, too little appears cold and calculating.
So, if we look at this through a modern lens, it's almost like Dimitri is being put on trial for being human.
Right? And here's what's really fascinating: the examination scene perfectly captures what psychologists call fundamental attribution error. We tend to attribute others' actions to their character while explaining our own actions through circumstances.
The way this connects to modern criminal justice is striking. Even now, we struggle with the same issues of circumstantial evidence and character judgment.
You know what's really mind blowing? Recent studies show that about 4% of death row inmates are likely innocent. That's the same kind of systemic failure Dostoevsky was pointing out: how our justice systems can mistake emotional complexity for guilt.
Well, that's chilling, and it makes me think about how Dimitri's examination reveals these layers of guilt. Guilt about lifestyle, about intentions, about everything except the actual murder.
And here's where it gets exciting. Psychological research shows that false confessions occur in about 25% of overturned convictions. Dimitri's refusal to confess, despite admitting to everything else, actually aligns with what we now know about genuine versus false confessions.
The way Dostoevsky captures these psychological nuances is remarkable, especially considering this was written long before modern psychology existed.
That's because he understood something fundamental about human nature, as illustrated by Dmitri's simultaneous love and hatred for his father, which perfectly describes what we now call emotional ambivalence, a concept that wasn't formally recognized until the 20th century.
Speaking of relationships, the way this examination reveals family dynamics is incredibly modern too. The toxic father son relationship, the financial dependency, the romantic rivalries.
And that's what makes this scene so relevant today. We're still dealing with these same issues, in our justice system, how do we separate truth from perception? How do we judge intent versus action? Modern courts still struggle with these questions.
Let me ask you something. Do you think our current justice system has evolved much from what Dostoevsky was critiquing?
Well, here's the thing. While we've made progress with things like DNA evidence and psychological profiling, the fundamental challenge remains. How do we judge the human heart? Recent studies show that judicial decisions can be influenced by factors as arbitrary as the time of day or whether the judge has eaten lunch.
That's absolutely fascinating and somewhat terrifying when you think about it.
You know what's even more intriguing? The way this examination scene predicts what modern psychologists call the fundamental paradox of testimony. The more honest someone is about their flaws, the less credible they often appear to others.
The implications for our modern world are pretty profound when you think about it.
Indeed, and here's what it all comes down to. Whether it's 19th century Russia or today's courtrooms, we're still trying to fit the complexity of human nature into the rigid framework of legal justice. And maybe that's the real lesson from Dmitri's examination, that accurate understanding requires us to look beyond simple categories of guilty and innocent.
So, in the end, JW, it's not just about solving a murder mystery, it's about understanding the mystery of human nature itself.
Precisely that, Jenny. And perhaps that's why this scene continues to resonate, because it reminds us that justice, true justice, requires more than just evidence and procedure. It requires a deep understanding of human complexity, something our systems still struggle with today.